I used to live in Washington, D.C., and I worked in radio there, I worked in television, I worked in tech there. And one of the things that I used to hear all the time while I was working for a government contractor was, it's good enough for government work. And I used to think of that as a joke until I kind of understood what they meant by that. And I wonder if it might have some benefit for you too. So let's talk about that in this episode of the VO Heroes podcast. I love getting my hands on new gear, new hardware, new software, playing with new stuff that potentially could be better in terms of sound or in terms of look. And I've also learned that that can become something that holds us back. Now, as we speak, we're in the middle of a series of free lessons in service of audiobook narration. We do the ACX Masterclass every year, and we're about to do it again. And so we give these free lessons mostly on things that people think they know about audiobook narration and may or may not be true. And in particular, the fears that they have around things like the tech, like the gear, like how to set things up and make things quiet in their space, and what gear to use, what microphone to use, what digital audio workstation to use, and so on. And one of the questions that I get all the time from them is, how do I make my sound better? I already have some stuff, but how do I make it better? And I always ask, well, how does it sound now? And sometimes they'll say, oh, it's fine. I just, it's never going to be perfect. And I always want to keep working, striving to make it better. And I think to myself, when does that end? When do we get to the point where, quote, it's good enough for government work? That actually doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't mean the government has low standards. And so, it's good enough. It means the government is using your tax dollars, and it doesn't want to overuse your tax dollars. And so it finds things that it can purchase that don't overspend, but do the job, get the job done. And I love that, actually. I don't think that's a joke. But I do know a lot of people, maybe you're one of them. I used to be one of them. I'm a reformed inveterate tinkerer, who are just that, inveterate tinkerers. They can't leave well enough alone. They worry that they need to always constantly be improving. Even when something is at the point where it's working really, really well and doesn't really need to be adjusted anymore. In fact, it's something you can now rely on. And here's a test for you if you're not quite sure. Does what you have set up, whatever you're considering changing, making better, tinkering with, does what you have set up work for you? Are you getting jobs from it? Are you making money with it? Are you getting the results that you like from it? Or are you sitting there and saying to yourself, I'm an artist. I will never be perfect. I need to strive to be perfect. I need to change things. I got to tell you, I've been using the same microphone for 12 years now. Maybe more. I don't even remember when the AT2020 came out. But what I tell myself all the time whenever I see a really cool looking microphone or a really expensive microphone is, what you've got is working for you. Look at the money you made this year, last year, the year before, and all the years before that. Do you really need to spend that money on something new, or the time on changing things to try and make it better? And then I hear things where people have adjusted things so many times that it's actually not as good as it would have been had they just left it alone. So here's my question for you. Can't you just leave well enough alone? Or do you find yourself just irresistibly drawn to making things better, to changing things for the better, to tweaking and adjusting and honing and refining? Now, I'm not talking about fixing things that are broke. I'm talking about not messing with things that aren't broke. And that's another way of saying do more of what works and less of what doesn't, but I won't bore you with that. Let me know in the comments below. And by below, I mean on voheroes.com where the conversation is nice and safe and sane. And you can subscribe to this podcast if you want to. I'd love for that to be the case. Let me know what your life is like when it comes to leaving well enough alone. I'm David H. Lawrence, the 17th. I thank you so much for watching and for listening. And I will see you in the next episode of the VO Heroes podcast.